Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. Hello, and welcome back to The Heart of You. This is the first episode of season 5, and today we have Oliver Rolfe. Oliver is the founder and CEO of Spartan International Group, two-time published author, life and career, health and well-being consultant, and guest lecturer. Oliver, I want to welcome you to the show.
Annette, thank you so much for having me. It's a genuine pleasure.
It is such a pleasure to have you on, and it's especially important, I think, right now, because as we are recording this is sort of going back in time, but going forward in time when this is going to actually be aired, it will be after the holidays. And it's a really good time to really start checking in with yourself and seeing where you are, right? And you recently released a book called Your Health and Wellbeing Today. And that is such an important topic, especially after you have been with family and there's been all kinds of chaos going on or whatever it happens to be. So this is about really checking in with yourself and seeing where you are. To start out, I would like you to give our audience a little bit of an idea of what your spiritual origin story is.
Absolutely. So the full title of the book is called The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today. And I think that holistic part really emphasizes my journey as a whole. So
Perfect.
I've had a very interesting journey, genuinely. I've had a lot of experiences, which at the beginning, my book certainly highlights. And a lot of those experiences were, as it were, physical, mental, energetic, and emotional, which kind of leads on to where the book develops to. However, my journey, both my parents, my mother and my father are both what I would say very spiritual. My father's always spent a lot of time connected to mediums, to psychics, to clairvoyants, and people that he's connected to over many years. So it's always been something that's been around our family as a whole. And I think, again, just as an overall view, we as a family have had a lot of different struggles. My parents got divorced when I was 5 or 6. Father had a nervous breakdown. Brother had addiction problems. Sister had anorexia and bulimia. And actually, and there is more from my side, probably quite a lot more from my side. But what it's done is we've all been through a lot of trials and tribulations individually and collectively. And I think we've had a spiritual protection around us. It's probably the best way to describe. So
Sure.
I remember points in my life where I had what I know would be my guardian angel at a point of real difficulty, I would say. And there's a genuine knowing, and I know that a lot of people say, well, seeing is believing. Well, knowing is believing, and experiencing is believing, and progressing on. And I could talk about this in great detail, but going in further into my life, when I had which again started the process of this second book, I damaged a disc in my back, which went into 7 discs, and then a diagnosis of something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is an inflammatory disease of the spine. Now, at that point, my life really changed quite significantly because I was very, very heavily into sport my whole life. Had a few damages here and there, which is highlighted in the book and actually kind of comes full circle to where I am now. And there was a point where, I had to stop football because of my back. Now, I was constantly active, constantly doing things. And at that point, I really had to evaluate what I needed to do for myself and really to give myself the best chance of, let's say, recovery and probably comfort in a weird way, as in being comfortable with myself in my new form, my new life, not being as active. And I think at that point, I was looking for spiritual guidance. And I think, most people will understand this if it's happened to them. And if it hasn't happened to them, it will happen to them. Is that when you are looking for a teacher often presents themselves.
Absolutely.
And literally at the same time as this kind of all happened with my back and I was going through this process of change, I met what I would call my spiritual teacher, who I actually call my spiritual mother. And she's involved in my book as well. And really kind of helped me develop my own form of spirituality, my understanding of even, the energetic nature of the chakras, but also connecting in a spiritual circle, which we often did, and really connecting to a very different level, whether it's to other people, to yourselves. And again, the more you connect to yourself, I think, well, in fact, I know the more you're able to, or one, better yourself, but better your environment and those around you, which I find is so incredibly important.
Yeah. Now, was a spiritual circle with other people part of the process that you experienced?
I would say so. I think for me, I meditate for many different reasons. To be completely honest, whether it's medical or spiritual, or having a moment of calm and relaxation. But for me, when I was in a circle in particular, the amount of energy you get. We are all energetic beings. That is
Right.
fact. If you disagree, have a look at our brains, how much electrical activity there is. It is a hotbed of electrical activity. Our hearts are
Mhm.
electrical. This is why, if you're ever going to have a diagnosis and you have an MRI, that's highlighting the electrical pulses, and ESG for your heart, same thing. So we
Yeah.
have constant energy, and really, when people talk about chakras, there is people it's very woo woo and it's a bit mystical. Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. It's only mystical because
Yeah.
you don't understand it or you haven't been taught about it. And if it was taught at school, it wouldn't be inverted commas woo woo. It would just be common knowledge.
Yeah, the way that I like to say it is that like it's almost as if science has not quite caught up yet to
Mm,
the spiritual aspect of things. So
mm,
it's considered woo woo right now because there's no sort of ability to quantify the chakras, right? But
mm.
in a place where the science actually starts catching up and there could potentially be, then it's going to cease to be so mysterious, right?
Well, absolutely, and there are books and studies available and out there. And actually, I think this is kind of where my book comes in as a connection too. And I've spent 20 years of my life in the financial world in the cities of, say, London, New York, Milan, Paris, etc., etc.
Right.
And the city is not a particularly, by nature, a spiritual place. I do think there is change, and I think there will continue to be change. But realistically, it's a not knowing or not being aware. And I think being aware is really important. The more aware you are, the more opportunity you have to take action. So with the holistic guide to your health and wellbeing today, we've really tried to highlight the fact that there is a genuine connection. There's an understanding behind it. It's more of a scientific fact than anything else, and I explain that in fair detail using a huge amount of data from other people who've done many years of research.
Right.
And I believe, once you understand that, and this goes back to the nth circle, the chakras are energy transducers of the body, subtle
Mhm.
energy. And I think that's what we've all missed through COVID when we were locked at home. We missed that energy. I often say,
Yeah.
when I'm with someone, I can feel them. I can genuinely feel people when I'm with them. And actually, even when I'm not with them, I can pick it up to a lesser amount or a lesser extent. And I believe those energy transducers, when you put it in that context of being with someone and feeling them and actually feeling their energy, we all do, but we don't believe it's there because we just think, wow,
Mhm.
it's just, I feel it's an emotion.
Right.
It's part emotion, but it's also energy, which creates the emotion as well and connects to a higher level, which includes body language. When you look at someone, again, it
Mhm.
creates emotion. So all of these things together, hence the reason why, as I said, with the holistic guide, it is the wholeness of the physical, mental, energetic, and emotional that connects together. And it's something that we need to look after concurrently. When
Mhm.
I'm in a circle, the energy between, and it could be anywhere between four people, it could be anywhere between, 12. And when you've got that
Mhm.
energy and you're in that moment, you are heightened and you really do get I would say, a sense of clarity. So for me, yes, it was I know it's a very long-winded way of putting it, but yes, it was, it was very much so.
It is important to talk about, I think, because during this process of your spiritual journey, finding a spiritual circle or a group of people who are resonating at a similar frequency is often difficult to find. I know that I felt incredibly isolated going through my spiritual journey in the early years, right? So I felt completely alone. I didn't know that other people were going through this. And quite frankly, in the beginning, I didn't even know I was going through a spiritual awakening. So that was like the whole other aspect of it. But yeah, so I feel like it is important to talk about, because if you were able to, find this spiritual circle in your process, it is incredibly helpful to accelerate that spiritual journey, because it amplifies that energy. So I'm curious how you found that spiritual circle in that time.
Well, that was down to my spiritual mother, so to speak.
Okay.
It's part of what she does. She goes and presents and conducts, let's say, weekends and whatever it might be. So she's had circles for, I think, many years. And, there was a group of people around her that I generally feel, and she still feels, that are there and were there for a specific reason, which we always are, but to go on and do for the future in many respects. So, unless you teach what you've learned, it's very difficult for that teaching and understanding to ever continue. And I believed in her mind, it's important. And I think in anyone's mind, when you're in this world in particular, is that when you have this understanding and you've seen and just want to make people aware, you do want to give back. And I think that goes literally with absolutely everyone. And even, come back to myself with this, this is, I wrote the book. I always had this book in mind, The Holistic Guide. But then at the end of 2019, my first book came out, which was called The Survivor's Guide to Your Career Today. And that's basically focused on, say, 16 to 25-year-olds, latter stage of education, early stage of career, but really done in a slightly lighter sense as well, to get this generation thinking about meditating and deep breathing and understanding that it's, not all bad. And when bad things happen, that, you don't have to look into the dark place. You can look towards the light, and it can be a positive experience. And that's kind of what I try to explain through my journey. And if you will, and if I can just briefly run through, I keep on saying my journey, and that probably doesn't explain to your listeners what that means. So if you will allow me a very brief version of this. So
please do.
Start with my parents getting divorced. So parents got divorced at 5 and 6. So father had a nervous breakdown. Before my brother's incident, between the ages 6 to 16, I'd had 45 operations in my life, mostly general anesthetics, mostly actually sinus based. I had asthma. I weighed about 55 pounds more than I do now at the age of about 12 or 13. Then my brother was in rehab. At the same time, I had a very, very, actually my sister was in rehab for bulimia and anorexia. Then my brother was in rehab. At the same time, I was having a very difficult relationship with a girlfriend many a year ago, and we're actually still in contact now. And invariably, she had said that she was pregnant with my child. Actually, wasn't my child. So it was a pretty difficult thing to go through.
Right.
And then on top of that, then I had, say, the first slip disc at, I think it was 32 I was, and that one slip disc went on to 7 slip discs, the ankylosing spondylitis. So, the whole process, and I think I probably missed a couple. I did miss 2 other things in there. Sorry. One was when I was younger, I was actually on an operating table. And when you're young, they basically give you gas and air really to knock you out.
Yeah.
Now, having had gas and air quite a few times at that age, I was very aware that I didn't like it in any way, shape, or form. So I thought I'd be really, really clever. And as they put the mask on my mouth, take a big breath, hold my breath so I didn't have to take the gas in. Anyway, what I happened to do, I ended up taking in a big gulp of the gas, knocked myself out. But then what happened was my mum was with me at the time. Obviously, when you're young, you allowed your parents with you. So my mother was with me. And she turned around to the anaesthetist and said, why is he going blue? So what had happened is I'd obviously knocked myself out by taking a big gulp of the gas, and I wasn't breathing. So
my goodness. So
they threw my mother outside of the anaesthetist room and basically got me breathing again, and onwards we went. And then another event I had was when I was younger, my family on a rowboat in Regent's Park in London. Long story short, the rowboat flipped over. I was stuck underneath it. And I think I was about 3 at the time. And my sister, who I think she was about 7, if I was 3, yeah, she would be 7, went underneath, grabbed me, and pulled me out. And
Wow.
if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here either. So,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of experiences,
Yeah.
a lot of things which I can't say that, like, individually changed my life. I think the back situation changed my life quite considerably. But all of these things have given me a great understanding, a great level of knowledge, because I've spent a huge time with doctors and professionals and anything holistic, literally anything holistic at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of piece together from a very wide base and from an experience base what works and what doesn't work. And I think when it comes to health and well-being in particular, I don't think there's a straight line path for everyone. I believe there
No.
is a path for everyone, and it's about
Mm-hmm.
understanding your own path. And I think that's, again, comes back to, my factor of being self-aware. The more aware you are, the more you'll understand that, okay, if I have that doesn't work for me, but if I do this more, I feel stronger or more clear in mind, or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
these factors, I think, are super important. These whole experiences throughout my life have definitely given me, in fact, one thing I knew for a fact was when I was going through them, they were there for other people. I knew I was going through these situations for the benefit of people around me and people I don't know who will go through the same situations in the future.
That's really important to identify, because sometimes people have a tendency to think, oh gosh, why is all this happening to me? And not really understanding that when you are going through extreme situations like that, if you are meant to be a teacher, if you are meant to be somebody who helps somebody in the future, you're not going to see that coming, right? To really identify the fact that some of these challenges that we go through in life are meant to happen from the standpoint of being able to have compassion. Not only that, but to then also convey potential solutions for other people so they don't have to go through something so severe.
Absolutely. And if they do, and they are going through that situation, to know that, one, they're not alone. People have been through it before. And there
Yeah.
are, actually, as someone said to me, signposts for them to say, well, like, if you go down this route, you give yourself more knowledge, more understanding, more comfort. And really, that's where the mental side of it comes in for me. I think the more that there is so much information out there, and there is so
Mm-hmm.
much information. I think because there's so much information, people get overwhelmed. Everyone
Totally.
gets
Yeah.
overwhelmed. In some ways, being selfish, the holistic guide, I'm going to be using it for me every day because it's made my life easier in taking out all of the noise that's around you.
Yeah.
And it's just been condensed as for me, it is a guide, hence the name, but it's something you can pick up and put down. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily an A to Z read. So it becomes like kind of like an encyclopedia for your own health. And
Beautiful.
I do know that it's an ebook, but I like the fact that if you were reading it and you can kind of highlight bits and pieces that resonate to you, and actually there's a notes page
Mm-hmm.
at the back and things like that, that's how I would want to use it. And how I personally use it is actually highlighting the bits that really do sit and resonate with me.
Have you ever used a book as divination before?
No.
So it's
No.
a really cool way of actually, so instead of using like tarot cards or instead of using a pendulum,
Hmm.
one thing you can do is take a book and just, meditate and ask your angels, ask your guides for the message that you need in that moment, right? And you flip the book and you can use your intuition to stop flipping the pages.
Yeah.
And then you basically, that's the page that, is meant for you. I do that a lot with, I have a book on the I Ching, and I do that with that book. There's several other books that I will do that with. So it makes me wonder if this would be a good use for the book that you wrote, because I mean, it sounds as if you have so much practical information within the book itself that, maybe that would be an opportunity for people to do that.
Oh, do you know what? Absolutely. I'm thinking about it, and I know exactly what you mean. You do need a specific type of book to do that. I haven't done it for ages, actually, thinking about it. I'm looking around me. I don't think I've got a book that I would even do it with. But you're actually right. So to kind of extend that. So the first part of the book in particular, you're talking about there are maybe 30 or call it 30 different areas that we look at. Each one of those areas, you could literally focus on for a day because it's got so much detail on. So actually,
Sure.
it genuinely could work. And even moving further, I completely agree. I'm going through it in my mind and thinking, actually, this is a really good idea. I might try and do this.
Yeah, give it a shot and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to give it a shot?
I'm just grabbed the book. So I'm just
do it. Let's do it. Let's do it right now.
No, is that possible? Oh my goodness. Okay. That's actually quite incredible. So obviously that makes no sense to anyone who's listening why that's incredible. So I've just landed on page 186. Now 186 in the Holistic Guide is part of numerology, which is something I absolutely love. And funnily enough, I was going to mention before in my spiritual journey, numbers are exceptionally important. It is a great tool. It genuinely is a great tool, especially for understanding yourself and your path and a lot about you as well. And I think most people I know have found genuine connection with it. So I landed on, say, page 186, and 186 is the number 7, and it's got, one side's got birthday, which is 87, and 186 is personality. So the personality number 7. Now, the reason why it's quite amazing is my personality number is number 7. Now, that is quite a ridiculous situation. And this, by the way, this is a book that I have not opened. It's a brand new book, just got a load delivered. I say a small load delivered. And for this to happen is quite incredible. So as a person, I'll read it. So as a personality number 7, you will have the following traits and focuses in your life. You're a deep thinker. You are analytical. You're introverted. You're intuitive, quick-witted, mysterious, wise, inspiring, spiritual or religious, outgoing, intriguing, intelligent, and secretive. So that is, it's quite remarkable actually. So in fact, you can do it exactly as you just said. You can pick it up and it will work.
And you know what's incredible about that too is that it has a secondary layer of meaning. The fact that you flipped to numerology, because you and I met through
Yes.
Anne Perry, who wrote that section of the book.
Absolutely, exactly. Anne and I worked together on that, and and Anne's fantastic as a numerologist. She's a wonderful person to speak to. She's got wonderful intuition, and also she's just a fantastic person.
Yeah, she's just an incredible human.
Yeah, she really is. And also, I think the other side of it is, realistically, when you have a look at numerology and numbers, and people also, trying to connect to numbers and how it works in the greater scheme of things, everything in life boils down to a number. Everything. Yeah. So on the basis that everything literally boils down to a number, it's not unusual that we would be affected by numbers and the connection too. So going back to the spiritual journey, one of the things that I think a lot of people end up connecting to is numbers, and specific numbers often come up. Again, it's in the book just after numerology, talk about the universal number meanings or the universal language, which is numbers. Now, I believe most people, when they're going through a spiritual awakening, often see 111 or 1111.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is amazing. When it happens, it's quite undeniable because one, it's not once. It literally happens the whole time.
Right.
And also it happens everywhere and in any scenario. As I said, mine was about 10, 12 years ago in particular. The awareness factor comes into this. So I remember going through a kind of flashback all at the same time. I was in Venice with my wife, and we were in a queue for a museum. And I was just saying to her, it's the first time I've spoken to her about this. And I said, I am seeing numbers everywhere, especially 111. It is everywhere. And I kind of recounted, I was on a trip actually elsewhere in Italy. My room number was 111. My office number, I'd realized, which I was in for about 3 years, was 1.11. As I was telling her the story, and this was, you couldn't have picked a better moment. I was finished telling her the story. She asked me what the time was just to find out, what our next thing was. It was 11:11. And I said, look, this is ridiculous. It's everywhere.
Right.
So, it's one of those things that, for me, actually, the numbers draw you into them. it's not as if you're looking at it, subconsciously or any other way. For me, when I'm connected, I have a genuine pull. So there was a scenario, and I think we talked about this briefly, about when you're in times of struggle or stress or worry or anxiety, how to cope and how to maybe to look inside yourself and to connect intuitively. So I remember I was in the car driving somewhere locally, and I was really frustrated. I can't remember exactly about what it was in particular, but it's something that was, I'd say, near enough upsetting me. And I asked a question, and the question was, I can't remember what the question was exactly, but as soon as I asked the question, I got a massive draw in what I would call in my core and my soul to not even to look at the clock. I was just drawn to look, and it happened to be 555. For anyone who knows what 555 is within, or even five in numerology or numbers, would be change. It's an element of change, things developing around you.
Interestingly enough, I actually just got yesterday at the checkout at the grocery store, I got the exact same thing. My total was 5555, and same kind of thing. Yeah, it's incredible when that happens.
I find it amazing when it happens to do with money in a way that it really shouldn't do. You kind of buy like 3 or 4 random items and it ends up with 777. It's like, how's that even possible? I didn't think about that. I didn't work that out. It's not, obviously you can put it down to the fact that it is obviously a random thing, but nothing in life's random. Genuinely.
Not at all.
There are moments in life which can seem out of random, if that makes sense. Whereas, the mundane of life, if you want to call it, that's the out of random. But that's the bit where you're floating and doing effectively what you should be, which is floating, until there's a point where you're needed to do something and invariably progress forward. So I think, I genuinely believe and know that the universe gives the energy you need at the time that you need it.
100%. Yeah, because at that time when I got it yesterday, it was 100% needed. And I knew immediately that it was a sign, because I had just gotten off the phone with my sister. We're dealing with something that's challenging at the moment. And that was a sign. I sent it to her immediately. I said, this is our sign that it's going to change. So, I mean, sometimes you don't even need it multiple times. Like you were talking about, you kept on getting the multiple ones everywhere. After you get used to seeing it, you don't need it repeatedly anymore. It's like you get the message once and you're like, oh, got it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah. Again, that comes down to the awareness of, and
right.
once you know it's there, and once you know that there are signs, and obviously once you see that sign, I think you start to see a lot of others. So,
right.
Bird feathers is another sign which a lot of people see. Different types of birds have different types of meanings. The meanings of when spirits around you, things being left or dropped, or all these different little bits that connect up to the whole, and physically connect up into a whole.
Yeah.
But invariably, everything we look at in life and everything we do in life comes from within. You can ask anyone anything externally, but realistically, the answer is 100% within. And very rarely is it anywhere else, or very rarely does anyone ever need to look anywhere else. You can look everywhere else for different things, for comfort and for friendship and compassion and love and a myriad of other things, although you should actually have that internally. However, the answers that anyone needs is inside. 555. So yes, so I was in the car, very frustrated, angry, and whatever else may be, and I got a genuine pull from inside. And it was just at the moment where I asked the question, I must have said, like, why does this always happen, or why is this happening? And it just went, well, bang, there's your answer. It's changing, so don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And literally, it's the thing that I picked up about that story in particular is I've got a great memory of remembering how I feel rather than certain other things in life. It's very strange. But I remembered specifically that energy inside coming through, one, to look at the number, but also the feeling that happened as soon as I saw the number, and the fact that all of that anxiety and frustration disappeared. And that's what can happen when you are fully connected. And there's no easy route, I would say, in a busy world, in a Western world in particular, to be continuously connected. it is
Yeah.
it's a process of doing the best you can to be the most spiritual person you can. But
Yeah.
I have no doubt that there is a time where you are called upon. And in all fairness, it goes along with the chakra cycle, because chakras open every 7 years.
Mm.
I think it's to your 49, if I'm right in saying. And, you're constantly evolving as your chakras, do progress and open. And I believe it's the third eye that opens when you're 42. So I'd say between 40 and 43, give or take.
Right.
A lot of things start to open up. And I think, and again, it starts to evolve with your heart chakra, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe there's constant developments as all of these progress forward as well. But it's just an incredible, incredible situation when you have experienced these things.
And you're absolutely right. You do need to experience these things. So you can hear somebody talk about it. You can hear us talking about it right now. And unless you actually experience it, it is very hard to really feel and understand.
Yes.
You can understand it mentally, right? So, if we're going to talk about the four core bodily systems that you write about in the book, you're talking about the physical, mental, energetic, and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You can have maybe like the mental aspect of that, like understanding what it is we're talking about. But unless you actually feel what it is we're talking about, you have that energetic pull, you have all of those things together. It may not fully click until those things are in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is again, it's an understanding of self and an understanding of others, and it's an understanding of who you are as a spiritual being and as a human being. And they are both different, albeit have a very strong connection.
Mm-hmm.
But even, if you're talking about experiences, so one of the, like, an individual who I was very connected, well, am very connected to and love a lot of the work he's done is Dr. Brian Weiss, who is
I love him.
just,
Love him.
yeah, just personally, I think his book should be taught in schools, and
100%. Yeah.
people should be made to read them, because you kind of go, why isn't this out there? Why aren't people reading it? Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we all doing it? It's just insane. So on the back of a number of the books that I've read of his, I have experienced my own regression, and regression's great. And a lot of people are scared of regression, but at the end of the day, it's a past life. It's not a now life. Yes, you'll be connected to it, but it's there to teach and learn and develop. So anything you did, I wouldn't worry about. And it's the lessons that you'll have in those lives as well. And it's the experience of it, and the emotion of it, and the emotion of passing as well, which is just mind blowing in an emotional way, a real connective way. Again, it's almost that feeling, as I mentioned, of seeing that 555 and being connected to it. It's being, unfortunately, at the end of life, it's likely that most of us will be in some form of discomfort or pain.
Sure.
And, it's that kind of passing over where all of that discomfort, pain, and whatever suffering you're going through just dissipates, and it just is like peace and beauty and wonder, and the real kind of sense of calmness. It's again, unless you've been through it, it's very, very difficult to explain it and describe it, because it just sounds like you're saying words to people, and
right. Right.
Words really don't convey how the feeling is. And in life, I think one of the best things we can do is actually feel. And a lot of people are quite scared of feeling.
Yeah. And it is super important to feel, obviously. And the one thing that I do want to share about an experience I had with Brian Weiss, actually. So he's sort of the introduction of how I started reading the Akashic records. So I went to a seminar. It was a 1-day seminar with him in Chicago, I think. And there were, I don't know, probably a couple thousand people there. It was, a huge, huge seminar. And he walked us through a brief regression. And I had never actually done it before. And I was a little nervous. I didn't know what to expect. And the lifetime that I was shown was super boring, super mundane. It was like, and my guides did that purposely because they knew I was scared. So they didn't want to send me anything that was like going to be super, scary for me or traumatic or anything like that. They wanted me to feel the quality of what it was like to be in the Akashic records, to actually experience that. So I could feel the difference in the energy. So I could feel how it works essentially without having, some huge event happening in whatever past life I was looking at. Right. So that's the other thing I like to mention is that if you're nervous about something, if you're nervous about experiencing any aspect of change, any aspect of moving toward what your higher self, your guides, and everybody is trying to sort of push you toward, if you have any fear about it, there doesn't need to be some giant cataclysmic thing that you experience. Like, you can have it happen in stages, right? It just depends on what you signed up for in your life. Like, you signed up for having a lot of the physical issues that you had because this is what you would be teaching. I signed up for having a lot of relationship issues in codependency and things like that because that's what I needed to overcome in order to be able to help people. It's all sort of tied together. But that being said, you're only going to be given what you can handle.
I agree. I do believe that depending on the path that you're on, you will be pushed to your absolute maximum.
Absolutely.
And that's the bit where the belief and the faith and everything else, one, comes in, but two, as you said, you'll be given and shown and directed in the right way to come through it at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, I think at anyone's stage, you're here to learn and you're here to progress, but there is a collective consciousness at the same time, whereas we are all here to learn and to progress humanity, and probably, I say probably, but to save the planet. But I have a feeling the planet will end up saving itself rather than us doing that for it.
Or the planet will save us.
Well, yeah, I think basically kind of a bit of the both, I think.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are overall, humans have quite a destructive nature, and the bottom line is fearful nature. Most of the things that happen in the world is due to fear. And it's very easy to say if there was more love in the world, that it would be a better place. It would be a better place. But I think along with love, it's trust and respect. Those are the two things which I think come with all of it for it to actually work. And it's very difficult in a business sense for people to have trust and respect. And obviously you're talking about thousands of years of cultural differences across the world, and trust and harm and everything else that's got to be undone. And the further and further we go in the direction that we are going as humanity will only drive us apart. The only thing that will end up changing is a lack of resources globally that affects everyone globally. That's the only thing that will end up bringing people together, whereby you could talk a thousand years time where there's virtually no more water. Right? What are we going to do then? You're going to work together.
Yeah.
You're not going to kill each other. And, over a land or rules. It's okay. We need to survive. What are we going to do? But unfortunately, it just seems that going through what we're going through is that it's going to take the absolute worst case scenario when it's already happened and way too late before people start looking at the actual benefits and what needs to be done. But that's a very difficult conversation and story.
Yeah, and it's something that can be looked at from the standpoint of the individual spiritual awakening and the global spiritual awakening, the collective. And when you go through your spiritual awakening, you are going to go through difficult times. I mean, it's inevitable. I often hear people talk about enlightenment and, how beautiful it is. And it is in a certain way, but you kind of have to go through hell and back in order to get there, so it's something that when you're talking about the collective and the collective awakening, that is it's a much bigger subject and can get quite overwhelming, actually. But that's where focusing on you and your holistic health, as you've written, is the best thing that you can do.
The first and foremost is that if you are not whole and if you're not comfortable, then anything else moving forward won't work. So this is a collective effort from everyone, everywhere. The minimum that we should be doing is looking after ourselves. And that really, I would actually say, for many people, I think the minimum and maximum they should be doing is look after themselves. That is the most important thing that so many people could do, including myself, looking after myself first has got to be key for me to be able to do what I'm trying to do and trying to assist as many people as possible. Yeah, and including companies and corporate businesses. The world's changed quite significantly over the last couple of years. And the generations, I would say, below myself and coming through, Gen Z, et cetera, there is a negative connotation with Gen Zs and the fact that they're, what do people call them? Snowflakes and super sensitive or hypersensitive. I just think, look, the world's different. They've been brought up in a world where things have been, let's say, fairly easy in many respects. As a humanistic standpoint, there's not been struggles or wars. You've had great moments of basically, dare I say it, free money, which is certainly stopped now. So, they've grown up in a I'm not going to say a fairy tale world, but certainly a world that hasn't had too many hardships. And, we're now entering into a really difficult time, really, really, financially, globally. You've got, wars in Russia and Ukraine. You've got talk of nuclear threats. We've got really, we've got genuinely a huge food issue. There is definitely less food that is available now than there has been over the last couple of years. And I feel that that's going to continue as well. So, there are a lot of things to contend with. Plus, you've got the fact it's harder to get jobs, and certainly jobs that pay well. And, how do you pay, or how do you earn enough to maybe live in New York or wherever else you might be in the cities? And I think for a lot of this generation in particular, it's a very, very tough time. And, there needs to be a lot more support from employers. And again, not just for Gen Z, I'm talking about for everyone, whether it's, parents or singletons or whatever, white, black, male, female, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you are, there needs to be support and guidance and a level of understanding, direction, flexibility these days. Because if there isn't, I think there's going to be a huge, huge mental health tsunami. And I've got genuine concerns. I really have genuine concerns over what could transpire if there isn't enough action done now or enough action taken now.
And the more healthy you are energetically, mentally, physically, all of that, the more healthy you are, the better you're going to be equipped to handle situations, let's say in a workplace. Because just in the time that I was in corporate, I started in corporate in 96. And basically, the way that companies treated their employees back then is vastly different than companies treat their employees now. And I'm just saying this as a broad generalization. Of course, that's not every company, but so to be able to be your own advocate, to be in a mental space and energetic space enough to know what is your limit, what your boundaries are, and understand that, okay, maybe I can't work 70 hours a week because it's going to affect my health. Maybe I can't work for this company because, I'm not getting enough sleep, or I'm in a toxic work environment, or whatever it happens to be. And when you're talking about that scarcity of jobs, scarcity of money, scarcity mindset in general, people will accept things that push their boundaries because they feel like they have nothing else, right? So to be able to pull themselves out and like feel into their own boundaries and be able to hold those boundaries and understand that you don't have to accept any sort of abuse of your own energy just to survive, right? This is kind of all of that wrapped into this challenge, which is listening to your intuition, following your intuition when you're in those challenging times. It's really difficult to do sometimes. And I'm curious how you're able to do it. Like, what is your process to connect to your intuition when you're going through something really tough like that?
Well, if I put myself back to 10 years ago, and even longer. So I've been in the city for 20 years. I've had my company for, I think, 12, 13 years. And I've always had a nature to push myself. I've always been told I've got a very good work ethic. But 10 years ago, I would push myself to a point of, calls at 2, 3 in the morning and, from London, and then up at whenever, and then just going again and going out for drinks with people and, doing it again, and genuinely just really not looking after myself, not exercising, just in the office, eating the wrong foods, not terribly wrong, but just not the right foods, not good for me, certainly. And I often feel that there is usually an event that wakes you up, if I'm honest, which is, I think, probably the real answer for most people. It doesn't have to be a heart attack or a murmur or anything like that. I'm talking about just something to make you aware. For me, that was obviously my physical ailments with my back, but also just kind of understanding where I wanted to be as a human being has always been an important factor for me, and something I look at today as well. There was a study done in 2017 which dictates something like there were 790 odd million people living with a mental health disorder. In addition to that, there's about another 180 million who are suffering from substance abuse. So it's about 970 million people in 2017. So before the pandemic, nearly 1 billion people, so about 1 in 7, give or take, in the world, give or take, had some form of an issue. You now fast forward that to what's happened post-COVID, and I guarantee that number's gone up a heck of a lot.
Significantly, yeah, I'm sure.
So, you could be talking about 15%, 10 to 15% of the population fairly easily who've got a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue, maybe even 20%. We just don't know. And, when you're in that scenario, how can you pull yourself out of it? I do think it's constant self-awareness. So, look, for me, I noticed the fact that I was swearing, and I hate swearing, actually. But when I'm frustrated, especially when it comes to football, weirdly enough, I end up swearing. But I noticed this in myself, and I was like, I've got to stop swearing. And swearing is not bad, and actually it can be very useful in certain circumstances and very good for English language, etc. But I had this thing, so I was like, okay, well, how do I do it? And I kind of had it in my mind for a while. I was like, okay, stop swearing. But it wasn't working, doing nothing. So I actually put a note in my diary, which reminds me every evening before I go to bed. And it just says, don't swear, or something like stop swearing in the morning, or whatever it might be. And genuinely, I can feel that my language is changing, and, my subconscious has picked up on the fact that it's not something I want to do, and I'm not doing it. So it was a really subtle thing and a very subtle example, but it's helped and it's worked. Now, the reason why it's pretty helped and it's worked is because I was just aware, and this is actually the whole point with everything. I really wanted that change to happen. I wanted to make that change happen. I felt it was important for myself, and it was something that I really wanted. I wanted it to happen, so I did it. Now, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're trying to do. If you do not want to do what you're trying to achieve, it's not going to work. Diets, for example. People say, I'm going to lose diet. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go on a diet, and I'm going to cut out all of this stuff, and it's going to be fantastic. And maybe for 2 weeks, they feel pretty good, but they're probably in pain every time they eat. Then the next time you see them, they're like, oh, this is awful. And then the next time you see them, they're off the diet, and they're back eating cakes and chocolates and all the stuff they don't worry. Now, you can't go from 0 to 100 unless you've just had a heart attack. It's come out of the blue. You don't have a choice. But putting that, those rare scenarios aside, or those not rare, unfortunately, but those scenarios aside, you have to want to do it, as I said. But you also have to give yourself time. You also have to be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up if you fall back and you make a mistake and you have a piece of cake, or you do something else. I would also say allow yourself time to cheat. We all need to cheat. So what I used to do when it came to food in particular, I used to have a weekday weekend mentality. So weekday I'd eat really healthily and make sure that was, I wasn't going out too much, and no takeaways, and all these kind of good things. And then the weekend it would be going out for dinners, a takeaway or whatever. But again, not going crazy, not not eating a week's worth of food in 2 days, because that just defies the point. You've got to have some level of common
Right.
sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then, it really helped me, because it always was one of those situations where I was like, okay, well, if I want it, I can have it. So
Hmm.
now in my life, it's, well, I eat anything I want. There is nothing that I eat that I don't want, and there's nothing I don't want that I don't eat. And I think that's a nice balance.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's also the energy of it. So here in France, I find it really fascinating that people really do enjoy their food. They really do
Hmm.
spend a lot of time enjoying their food. They don't look at food as evil or as, challenging or anything like that. Now, obviously, again, this is a broad generalization, but culturally, the French really do enjoy eating and enjoy the food.
Hmm.
And so, looking at it from my American standpoint, and for somebody who has struggled with eating and exercise and weight pretty much my whole life, I've always been in that space of, okay, I have to always deprive myself. I have to always make sure that I'm exercising, 5, 6 days a week, so that's been a majority of my life. And when you look at the habits of it, you're absolutely correct. First of all, you have to want it. Second of all, if it's an emotional attachment or an emotional issue, you have to get to the bottom of why it is you're doing what you're doing. And that sort of gets into that addiction space, right?
Hmm.
So then once you get to the bottom of why it is you're doing what you're doing, and you're able to then clear that energy, you're able to work through whatever it is that is the base cause of that, then it comes down to energetically of why you're doing the things you're doing. So, okay, well, why am I having this chocolate right now? Well, I don't need it. I don't necessarily have any emotional attachment to it. I just want it. Okay, cool. So, if you want a piece of chocolate right now, okay, have a piece of chocolate. But then if you 5 minutes later say, okay, I want another piece of chocolate, then it's a snowball effect, right? So it is about that self-regulation and being able to not have that emotional attachment to the thing, and then being able to work through it. So obviously that's a very simplified version of that, right? But that is a really good example of how the energetic aspect of it pulls into your habits, your behaviors, and everything else. And having all of the tools that are available to you to be able to work through what works for you is super important, which is why you wrote the book that you did, which is why I have this podcast, which is why you want to give people as much information and as many tools as possible, because not everything is going to resonate with everyone.
Absolutely. And that's, the thing is, it's very difficult at times when whether it's me or anyone else, presents something like this, because you're never 100% sure if it resonates with an audience, let alone anything else. But I think the one element that I've been really genuinely encouraged about with the holistic guide to health and well-being today is the fact that, I've had a lot of reviews from a lot of different areas, and they've all generally 100% got exactly what the book is. One of the nice comments that's often come back is the fact that it's not a preachy rhetoric. It's not telling you to do anything. It's not saying, look, I did this, go and do that. It really is a guide for everyone, just to have a look at the information from some of the best scientists, researchers around the world in basically all of these topics. And the fact that I've got, a 30-year psychologist working alongside me, Dave Moxon, Anne Perry, obviously numerology, Sarah Leslie with the clairvoyant healer medium and help with the chakra systems, and then also Darren Rolfe, who is my brother, who runs he's also the CEO of Steps Together, which is a rehabilitation center in the UK. We've got a really strong understanding of where the bases are from all of our pillars. And additionally to that, we've got other professionals as well helping on the financial side, because financial well-being is as important as anything else, especially in the Western world, but also just in the human world. Unfortunately for most people, finances becomes a very difficult topic, and one that they often struggle with. It causes difficulties with relationships. It causes difficulties with mental health, suicide, related to finances as well. These are elements that, if we can look after our holistic self, which again includes our finances, together, you mentally will be stronger, physically will will be better and feel better. Energetically, you will feel more empowered and ready to go every single day, and emotionally just ready to take on the world. And I think these are the things that, I used to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm so tired. I can't get up. I don't want to go to work. And this is my own company, is going into the office.
You're right.
And now I'm in a situation now where I cannot wait to wake up every morning and get to work. I really, genuinely, I love what I do. I love the people I connect with. Nothing's changed realistically in between what I felt like before and what I feel like now. I'm just more in control. That is genuinely the only difference that's changed. I'm more in control of my mind. I'm more in control of how I want to work and how it benefits me. Because realistically, with my own elements, I'm not the same as other people, and I'm aware of that. But would I have been aware of that working for someone else? I don't know, being honest. But I think having this tool and the holistic guide there, I actually probably would have had a better view had someone have given me the opportunity. But all I know is that we need as much guidance around us, as much time for ourselves, because I think time is so vitally important. And spending time alone is vitally important.
Oh, it is, definitely.
It probably sounds quite bad, but I love spending time alone.
Oh, I do too.
It's my time of peace and calm, but also, you don't have to meditate to be in that space. It's literally just sitting and being. And as someone else who I'm also very connected to spiritually said to me, we are human beings, not human doings. And I always felt that's such a nice phrase to keep on repeating. And it's very hard because realistically, I think we'd all pretty like to be on a beach somewhere, chilling out, catching some fish in the sea and that living our life in that way.
Sure.
But our lives aren't like that. We are in a very different platform and process. And therefore, we've got to adapt the best we can. But I think the more that we know ourselves, the better we can adapt for ourselves, but also for everyone around us.
Yeah. And it's about listening to yourself and understanding what it is that you personally need. Because what you need personally as Oliver is potentially going to be completely different from what I need.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying you wake up and you're excited to go to the office. For me, I don't necessarily want to go to an office. I work out of my house. And when I wake up, I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, but I need a good hour to actually get back into my body and really wake up and, I do my meditation and I have my little routine. So, yes, of course I'm excited, but I'm not like a get up and go kind of person. Right. So everybody has their way of moving through the world, and it is about really fine tuning it and figuring out that beautiful way of doing it.
Absolutely. And it's you work from home. I've been in an office for 12 years. Since COVID, we've been out of an office, and we are, up and down. And whether we're, traveling in London or throughout Europe or over in the US, in Asia, Middle East, this is kind of the whole point. And to me, this would be the ideal point of my journey in my life now, to explore and have the invitations to explore. I think that's part of one of the biggest joys of the world, which we were taken away from us throughout COVID, to travel, to experience people's cultures, see people face to face, and to really connect on a very different level. I think is one of the best things that we can do as humans.
100%. So what is next for you now?
Very good question. Well, the book officially comes out next Friday, so the 25th of November in the UK and Europe. And actually, it comes out in the US on the 1st of December because of Thanksgiving. So it is generally one of those brilliant gifts when you're not too sure what to buy someone after they've invited you for dinner, especially for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. It's so easy to get this as a gift because it works for everyone. There is a connection in it for everyone. And for most people who are, I would say, plus 40 to 45, they've pretty much got everything they want in life anyway, physically. And it's nice to offer them something that, can enlighten them and actually help them in a different way. So that's first and foremost. It's having the book out there. We are currently, I've actually got a presentation in New York for a very large US investment bank, which we're trying to help them with their health and well-being of their employees, which is
oh, that's exciting.
It is, it's an important thing for me personally. And, it's funny actually when I start thinking about it, I kind of get emotional about these things because it matters.
Yeah.
But the holistic guide is yes, it's a book, and yes, I've spent a lot of time on it, and I do believe it's good, but I think the essence of it is why I've done it, what it's there for, and really what I would like it to do, which is to go out there and just help as many people as possible, give them as much awareness and self-knowledge and self-control as possible. As an author, I think the financial elements are something that people think that, you get paid exceptionally well. It doesn't work the same way when you're selling a book. But the point for me is the message and the importance of what's in there means so much more than anything else. Like anyone else in life, you always want to get paid for the work that you do. And I think, as I said to you many a time before, I want as much money as there is to humanly have. And I have it with open arms. And the reason why, and I probably wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, but the reason I say that now is, one, because I'm aware of what I would do with it. And two, I genuinely believe that having a huge abundance of wealth will give myself and others the opportunity to really add genuine value globally and to do more of the work that we are doing now, and people like yourself are doing, and really try and empower as many people out there as humanly possible, because there is a movement that's started, whether people are aware of it or not. The collective consciousness of the world is rising. I feel that there's a stronger connectivity with people. It's not something that I've seen before in my life as much as I've seen it now, but I genuinely feel that people are being connected together. And I feel that that is happening because there is a greater need for awareness, for understanding, but not in a way to be taught as in, going to school or university, but by experience and by, I'm going to say, by people who are real rather than people who are there as part of the process. So for me, that is my heart and soul talking. That's what I would love to do and love to happen.
And it sounds like you are well on your way to do that very thing.
Please God, I certainly believe that we've started on the right foot. So please God, it can continue for many a year to come.
Beautiful. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Oliver. I wanted to ask you how people could get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Well, I am constantly available on many forms of social media. If you want to ever join anything we do, I'm on LinkedIn. We have a big following there, and a lot of our media is that on LinkedIn particularly. We also have a newsletter which comes out, which is going to start focusing more and more on holistic health, and that's called Spartan Extra. So if you type in Spartan Extra on Google, you will find it, and that's extra with an capital X. RTA, very clever way of doing it, obviously.
Lovely.
So Spartan Extra. And then worst case scenario, you can reach me on my email address or via our website, which is www.spartan-int.com.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. And I so look forward to reading this book as soon as it comes out. I cannot wait. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And I encourage all of the listeners out there to pick it up whenever it is available to you in the country you are listening from. Again, thanks so much, Oliver.
And thank you so much for having me. It's such a wonderful conversation as always. And, it's important that we connect to ourselves and to connect to each other. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Wonderful. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can always reach me through my website at infinitesoullove.com. You can also reach me on all social media at infinitesoullove1111.